Once again, welcome to Christ Community Church. Inside of your worship folder is a connection card. Please go ahead and pull that out right now, and you can write your name on the front if you're a regular attender or member. If you are a guest here today, we hope that you'll fill out some fuller information and allow us to get to know you a little better. On the back side, there is a place for prayer requests and to get messages to us. And for me, so often, I get home and it's like I told somebody I would do something. Who was it and what was it? If you'll write it down on that connection card and put it in the offering basket, then we'll stop that, all right? You can help me out. So we will receive the offering at the end of the service, and you can place those cards in the offering baskets when they come by. Now we have, the month of August is a month where things are getting started. We're getting back into the fall season. Used to, when I was growing up, that was September. You know, inflation, now it's August. That's how inflation creeps up on you. And so the kids have a pool swim party on the 19th, which is a Wednesday night. The youth have a back-to-school bash on the 23rd. Fall semester growth groups get going and started in earnest with many of them with new curriculum, beginning the week of August 26th. Some will start the 25th, 26th, 27th. We have groups that meet all week. I was thinking the other day, we have groups that meet on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Sunday. All right? So they'll all get started with the new semester. And then we're going to do another service of baptism on the 30th of this month, the last Sunday of this month. If you would like to be baptized, please let us know on your connection card. That's the quickest and easiest way since you got it there in your hands right now. And then we'll plan for you to be a part of that as well. All right, so that's what's going on at Christ Community Church over the next few weeks. We're going to take a look at Moses. One of the reasons that I like Moses is that he is not a typical success story. He occupies one of the most important places in all of biblical history, and because of that, it's easy for us to begin to think of him as some kind of a superhero. He's this strong deliverer, this spiritual giant. After all, he is the Prince of Egypt. Remember that movie? It's been a while, but he's the Prince of Egypt. The truth is, he was an ordinary guy. In fact, there's pretty good evidence as you read through this story that he was actually pretty deeply wounded, trying to live between two worlds and truly never fit in either one. In our minds, he's this towering leader, yet God once referred to him as the most humble man on all the earth. The truth is that in the process of living life, all of us accumulate some nicks and wounds. We're going to show on the screen a picture that I took in Yosemite back a number of years ago when my girls were younger. We're going to show on the screen a picture from Yosemite. Those ants on one side are my girls. That's Julie and Christy up there looking real small. That gives you some perspective on the size of that tree. Redwoods are towering trees, yet if you were to cut one down and look through a cross-section on that tree and examine the different rings, you would see that there are different nicks and wounds. Those rings would contain the story of what happened to those trees across their lifetime. Some rings would show years of drought. Others would show lots of growth, lots of rain. They might show where they've been hit by lightning or maybe survived a fire. Imagine for a moment we all have rings. And I guess if we carry our metaphor through, cut us in half to look at our rings. How about that? What would our rings show? Would there be rings in you that would show bullying on the playground as a kid, where things got mighty hard, where you hated to go to school every day? Or maybe there might be some rings that would show damage left by never really hearing the words from your dad you wanted to hear, "I love you." Or maybe from your mother, "I'm proud of you." Or there might be a ring that would show when a spouse slammed a door, and in that instance, the marriage was over. I pastored a long time. My hunch is there are some rings that would show that for some of us, somebody touched us in a way they had no right to touch us. Or maybe the rings in your life would show that you were only truly accepted when you performed, whether that was in sports or at work or some way at home. I know you'll be relieved to know that we're not going to ask for testimonies this morning. But I suspect that most all of us carry wounds because that's what it means to live life in a world such as this. And the problem is sometimes those wounds, rather than healing, they get infected and fester. I read to you the short version of Moses' story from Acts chapter 7. Let's take a look at that. We're going to take a look at it verse by verse. In verse 22, it says, Moses was taught all the wisdom of the Egyptians, and he was powerful in both speech and action. For the first 40 years of his life, Moses goes to all the right Egyptian schools. He learns the ways of Egypt. His intellect is sharpened. His learning of leadership is done by some of the very best in the world at that time. Moses may have looked like he had it all together, but the truth is that on the inside he knew his DNA did not fit that of the Egyptians, and it bothered him. Deep down, Moses had a longing to belong. In verse 23 it says, when Moses was 40 years old, he decided to visit his fellow Israelites. Why did this happen when he turned 40? We talk about a midlife crisis in our culture, something that happens when you turn 40. Well, maybe it's not just our modern culture. Maybe this is a part of the human condition. I mean, Moses decides to go on this search when he has his 40th birthday. What is it about a 40th birthday anyway? So he goes on this trip to discover his roots. He's probably looking for acceptance. And what he finds is an Egyptian beating a Hebrew slave. And this is one of the leaps that takes place in the story of Moses. How does Moses go from exploring his roots to killing somebody, to committing murder, in one single step? But that's what happens in this story. He sees this Egyptian beating a Hebrew slave, and something breaks inside of him, and he can't take it. What is that thing that broke inside of him, and why was it there? He becomes a self-appointed deliverer. He kills the Egyptian. He hides his body in the sand. And let me tell you, there is lots of sand in the Sahara. Look at how Stephen tells this story. It says, he saw one of them, a Hebrew, being mistreated by an Egyptian, so he went to his defense and avenged him by killing the Egyptian. Moses thought that his own people would realize that God was using him to rescue them, but they did not. You see, in some way, Moses had in his mind that he was going to be the hero of this story. And he was going to start by killing this guy. So, what is going on here inside of Moses? He thought that if he just reached the Hebrew people, that they would embrace him. They would realize that God has done this in order for him to be the deliverer. But the very next day, he comes back and he sees two Hebrews who are going at it. And he steps between them and he says, break it up, guys. You're brothers. Don't do this. And one of the guys, and Stephen tells us it's the one who was in the wrong. One of the guys said, well, who made you a ruler and judge over us? Are you going to kill me as you killed that Egyptian yesterday? And Moses knows that the word is out. The jig is up. He might have been raised as an Egyptian. He might have been raised as Pharaoh's own grandson, but he knows that this will not protect him. He's denied the Egyptians. He's taken the side of the slaves. It's over. He's going to kill me, he thought. Grandpa's going to kill me. I got to go. Verse 29, when Moses heard that, he fled the country and lived as a foreigner in the land of Midian, where his two sons were born. Moses ran. Now he doesn't feel like he fits in either culture. He's lived in this place somewhere between being an Egyptian and being a Hebrew, but now he no longer feels that he belongs in either. So he runs and he hides as a foreigner. The word that's in our text, foreigner, actually means literally, I don't belong here. And that's what he names one of his sons. You see, Foreigner is not just the name of a 70s rock band. Think about what this means. Moses' name, it means drawn out. It basically means found me in the river. That's where they got me from. They drew me out of the river. And now his son is I don't belong here. Found me, this is our family. Found me in the river and I don't belong here. That says a lot about Moses' woundedness, doesn't it? We often compensate for our woundedness by running. We run away from reality. We run away from the truth. We run away from God. We chase after a whole lot of things to compensate and to fill the voids that we feel. Things like achievement and success and status and money. And we pretend that everything's okay. And we'll sacrifice almost anything and everything to fit into some peer group. And it's not just teenagers that do that. And like Moses, wounded people tend to lash out in frustration. They tend to take matters into their own hands and to make bad decisions. They build up this poison inside of them, and over time it begins to leak out into their lives and in the lives of those around them. And eventually it lands people in a desert like it did Moses, a desert of failure, regret, and guilt. And the truth is, the Bible makes it clear that all of us have this experience, that it's universal. The Bible says all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. We all fail. We all make mistakes. And it lands us in the desert. Well, that's where this prince of Egypt landed. And the good news is that there are some things we can learn in the desert that we can't learn anywhere else. Oswald Chambers is a guy, he's written this book that has become a devotional book that many people read. And he says this. He says, God is anxious that his children get a good education. Every man that he has used has had a course in the University of Arabia, in wilderness training. Joseph, Moses, Elijah, John the Baptist, Paul, even his divine son. These are a few of the distinguished graduates. The fees are large, the courses are severely high, the discipline exacting, and many don't keep it up, but drop out. The marked results are broad perspective, steady nerves, keen eyesight, insight, utter dependence upon God, utter independence of man, childlike simplicity, warm sympathy, deep humility. The highest award goes to patience, the rarest trait of all. And God has no shortcuts in his training program. I thought that was good. In the first part of his life, Moses was educated in the very best schools, the very best that Egypt had to offer. And now his character needed to be developed so that God could use him for what God was actually going to do in his life. And so God takes him. Now, J. Oswald Chambers calls it the University of Arabia. I didn't really like the ring of that, so I renamed it. Sorry, Oswald. We're going to call it today the Desert School of Character Development. How about that? A longer name, but more descriptive. There's nothing like the Desert School of Character Development to reveal your strengths and your weaknesses and to shape and mold your character. What classes did Moses take when he attended God's Desert School of Character Development? Well, for sure, he took Obscurity 101. I'm going to move now from Acts' account to Exodus. Exodus 3:1 says, Now Moses was tending the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, and he led the flock to the far side of the desert. Now, I want you to get a picture of what's happening. I failed to put a map into the slide deck today to show you where Midian is, all right? Midian is nowhere, all right? That's where Midian is. There is nothing there. When I was in seminary in the 1970s, they were just beginning to do some archaeological work in Midian. It's so obscure, people still don't go there today. And then Moses goes to the far side of nowhere. He gets to nowhere, and then he keeps going even beyond nowhere, to a nowhere, even a nowhere. Now that's obscurity. Obscurity has a way of taking you from who's who to who am I. You're no longer defined by your title or your position or your accomplishments or your talents or your looks or your possessions, all of these things that we think that matter. It's just the real you and the real God. And in the end, only one part of your identity really matters, and that's the part where you're a child of God. That's it. When we understand that, we begin to get the lesson that we're being taught. Maybe another course that Moses took was a practicum in discomfort. Nobody ever signs up for that one on purpose. It has a way of stripping us down to basics, making us evaluate what's important and what's not. That's one of the reasons, we haven't done a mission trip in a while, but that's one of the reasons that I love to take people on missions trips, is because you get out of your comfort zone and you get into another culture, and sometimes in another culture you can begin to see yourself and your own culture in ways that you never could. It does make you uncomfortable. James talks about trials and hardships. He says, "Consider it a sheer gift, friends, when tests and challenges come at you from all sides. You know that under the pressure, your faith life is forced into the open and shows its true colors. So don't try to get out of anything prematurely. Let it do its work so that you become mature and well-developed and not deficient in any way." Moses certainly took a course on time management. If you take a car trip with your family, especially if you have young kids, you're going to hear one question, and it's going to start probably not too far from home, and it will continue for the duration of the trip. And that question is, are we there yet? Moses had to listen to the children of Israel singing that tune for 40 years. Somebody has said it took one night to get Israel out of Egypt, but it took 40 years to get Egypt out of Israel. That's a long time. Don't cut class when you're taking God's class on time management. Another course Moses probably took was Solitude 401. It's an important class. It's a class every leader has to take. Because how can we become something for God if we don't spend time with God? Nothing has ever been accomplished for him that's of significance without significant solitude. God says, "Be still and know that I am God." So Moses spends those first 40 years living in Egypt, all the best that Egypt has to offer. He spends his next 40 years in the wilderness, in God's desert school of character development. And then one day, as he's out there on the backside of nowhere, all of a sudden he sees something that catches his interest. It's a bush that's burning on fire. The desert is hot. Things dry out. Dry things burn easily. A lightning strike can light it up. That by itself is not particularly interesting, but as Moses sees this bush, he realizes it's not being consumed. It's not burning up. And then it gets really weird when the bush starts talking to him, all right? Exodus 3, verse 4. When the Lord saw that he had gone over to look at this bush that's burning, God called to him from the bush, "Moses, Moses." And Moses said, "Here I am." "Do not come any closer," God said. "Take off your sandals, for the place you are standing is holy ground." I find a couple of things very interesting in this story. First of all, there's this idea of a bush that will not burn up that symbolizes God himself. To this day, we use fire to represent, to symbolize the presence of God. When we have our communion table here down at the front, we often will have candles on it, and those candles the burning candles symbolize the presence of God. That's why when we have our communion table in here and we have the candles on it, I want them burning during a service, all right? I don't want them out. That's bad symbolism. But one thing you may not know, our candles here at this church, they're actually kind of a spring-loaded thing with the wax on the inside. Those candles only burn about 90 minutes. So I got to time it. Somebody has to time it. We dare not light them too early. or they will burn out about the time I'm praying the final prayer. That's really bad symbolism. But a burning fire symbolizes the presence of God, and God is an unquenchable fire that is never extinguished. Sometimes you'll hear the question, people today ask all kinds of questions, and for some reason, one that agnostics think is going to really trip up Christians is, well, who created God? I don't know why they think that's a good question, God is outside of time. He had no beginning. He has no end. We have a mother. God did not. We need food to survive. God doesn't. We need electricity for energy and heat. God has his own power source. We can get sick or killed or distracted or scared or hurt. God is never in danger. He never gets distracted. He never needs sleep. He never gets nervous. He never burns out. Scientists tell us that the sun's going to burn out in a few million years. God will still be burning. And there on the far side of the desert, Moses is having this encounter with the eternal God of the universe. And God says, Moses, the place where you're standing is holy ground. Not because it's special dirt, but because I am here. So Moses, take off your sandals, for you are having an encounter with the living God. Take off your shoes. And this is the second thing I find especially interesting about this encounter, because most of the time, sacred things are kept covered. In the temple in Jerusalem, in the Holy of Holies, that most holy place was curtained off from everything else. You couldn't see what was inside there. It symbolized the presence of God inside of there. So it was curtained off where you couldn't see it. In synagogues, when they would pass one of the scrolls, rather than even touching the scroll with their fingers, they would cover it with a covering, and they would pass that to the person who was going to read it. They couldn't touch it because it was holy. So you would think God might say, Moses, put on your shoes. First put on 3 pairs of socks, then put on your shoes, because you're standing on holy ground and you can't take it. And you need to be insulated from that which is holy. But that's not what he says. He says the exact opposite. Why is that? I got real curious about that and decided to do some research about it this week. Rabbi Jason Strobel says shoes create a barrier protecting feet from discomfort and symbolize disconnection. So God's instruction for Moses to remove them represented a call for complete spiritual connection, a full experience of God's holy presence. I think that's a good explanation. It's like God is saying, I want to get skin to skin with you. I want to get personal with you. Take your shoes off. Touch the holy. Feel the burn. God gives Moses a call, an assignment during this encounter. God lets Moses know that he's seen the misery of the Hebrews in Egypt, and he's about to do something about it. So, beginning in verse 7, this is what the text says. The Lord said, I indeed have seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I've heard them crying out because of their slave drivers, and I am concerned about their suffering. So I have come down to rescue them from the hand of the Egyptians, to bring them up out of that land into a good and spacious land, a land flowing with milk and honey. He's saying, Moses, I'm getting ready to move. And he says, now the cry of the Israelites has reached me, and I have seen the way that the Egyptians oppress them. So now go. I am sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt. And Moses says, excuse me, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt? And God said, I will be with you. God is saying, Moses, didn't you catch the part where I said I have heard their crying out and I have come down to rescue them? Didn't you hear that part? I will do the rescuing part. I will do the bringing them up out of that land into a much better place. I will do all that, but I'm asking you to go and to lead. Verse 13. And Moses said to God, and get this is an incredible line. Moses says, suppose I go. Moses is speaking hypothetically to God. Suppose I go to the Israelites and say, the God of your fathers has sent me to you, and they ask me, what is his name? Then what shall I tell them? We have then one of the greatest verses in all the Bible. God says to Moses, I am who I am. This is what you are to say to the Israelites. I am has sent me to you. In these times, every god had a name. There was Baal and Zeus and Mercury and Diana. They all had names. I suppose there's probably one named George. But what God tells Moses is, tell them, I am has sent you. It's a form of the verb to be. God, who are you? I am. That tells us who God is, and it tells us something about who we are not. It was Louis Giglio that referred to, those little, when you go someplace to a conference or something, they'll give you a little sticker, and at the top it says, I am. Louis Giglio says that when we come to God, we ought to get one that says, I am not. And then lists who we are not. He is perfect. I am not. He is infinite. I am not. He is transcendent. I am not. He is unfailing. I am not. He is all-knowing. I am not. He is all-powerful. I am not. Life and technology are moving at an incredible rate these days. About 20 years ago, I found a statistic. I remember finding it. It said that the sum of human knowledge was doubling every 2 years. This was 20 years ago, before AI. But God knows everything. And He knows how it works. There are no surprises for Him. There is no subject where God doesn't know all of the content. I remember I've been studying theology and all this stuff. I'd spent about 8 years studying, and then at one point I decided to do a doctorate in education administration. And I remember I got into my first class on education administration, and they're talking about the content we'd have to learn, and they would talk about how long the field was and what we had to study. And I'm looking at all this, and I'm thinking, that's only a little over 100 years. All the content, a little over 100 years. I've been in a field where I've been trying to understand everything for the last 3,000. The limited scope of the content just stunned me, because there's so much, and God knows it all. He invented all of this. He knows about psychology and physics and medicine and genetics and biology and chemistry. He knows it all. Psalm 147 says, great is our God and mighty in power. His understanding has no limit. In Romans 11, Paul writes, have you ever come on anything quite like this extravagant, the generosity of God, this deep, deep wisdom? It's so deep He couldn't do with just one deep. He had to do two. It's way over our heads. We'll never figure it out. Is there anyone around who can explain God? Anyone smart enough to tell Him what to do? Anyone who has done Him such a huge favor that God has to ask for His advice? Has God ever said to anyone, I'm having a little bit of trouble with this galaxy over here. Can you help me out? Moses launches into all these excuses. They won't listen to me. They won't believe that you appeared to me. I'm a fugitive with a bounty on my head. I had this confusing childhood. I stutter. I can't speak well. I don't do well in crowds. I can't do this, God. Would you just get somebody else? And God says to Moses, I have chosen you. You have my grace. You have been accepted by me, and that is all that matters. Your character has been refined. Your heart has been humbled. Your past has been erased. I'm giving you a second chance. I want you to go back and face the most powerful man on the planet, look him in the face, and tell him you're going to take his labor force out of the country. I want you to go back and to lead the very people who rejected you when you tried to reach out and help them. I want you to go back to that place that marks the greatest failure in your life. And so out of the bush, the God of grace, hope, and power speaks into the life of an 80-year-old shepherd. And he says, I'm not done with you yet. I want to use you. And he does. And the response for this is so simple. It's so simple and it's so short. Exodus 4:20, it just says, so Moses took his wife and his sons, put them on a donkey, and started back to Egypt, and he took the staff of God in his hands. That's it. We have all of this. They get on the donkey and go. If you've been wounded, if you've lived in the desert of failure, I believe that one day you will have a burning bush experience. I believe that you also have an encounter with an unquenchable God. I believe that he will say to you, take your shoes off. Let's get skin to skin. It's time for you to move out of the desert. I want to use your life. I've chosen you. And I'll be with you. And it may be today that you may think that God has written you off. Surely there's somebody out there more qualified to do the job. But like Moses, you need to think again. He's choosing you. And my hope today is that some of you are experiencing a burning bush moment, even this very moment. My hope is that God is speaking to some of your hearts and prompting you. And he's saying, take my hand. I'll lead you out of the desert. I'll lead you to a new kind of life. One of hope, one of purpose. I'm not through with you yet. But yeah, God, you don't know how much that scares me. Who's going to provide for my needs right now? I am. Who's going to help me find a new job? I am. Who's going to mend my broken heart? I am. Who's going to walk with me on that scary road to recovery? I am. Who's going to make sure that wrongs are made right someday? I am. He is the great I am. Always has been, always will be. I'm going to ask you all to bow your heads just now as we wrap up. I'm not going to ask you to literally take your shoes off today. That could be unpleasant for us this morning. But I'd like you to symbolically take your shoes off. I'd like for you to listen to the still small voice of God as he would speak into your heart and into your life. Let me ask you, what wounds are you carrying? Are they infected? Is the infection seeping out? Are you in a desert place right now? What's God been teaching you, by the way? Do you feel stuck? Do you feel paralyzed by guilt or regret? Do you wish you could have a mulligan and somehow start over? What excuses have you been offering God? And most important, can you hear God speaking right now? Can you feel the burn of a God that never ceases burning? Can you hear him say, take my hand, it's a new day, walk out of the desert. I want to use your life right now. I'll give you the energy. I'll give you the wisdom. I'll give you the strength. I'll supernaturally empower you if only you will surrender to my leadership and recognize that I am the great I am. Father, as we come to this moment today, I pray that we would be sitting here with shoes off and hands open, saying, I surrender. I give it all to you. Use me as you will, according to your will and purpose. Lord, as I look at the world today, every day I look at the news and it seems to be worse than the day before. It's not fun to watch the news these days. And yet I have the sense that what you're waiting for more than anything else is for your people who are called by your name to surrender completely to you, to be used by you, because you have a will and purpose that you are doing in this world. And our job is to tell the world of who you are so that people can be saved and so the full number of those that you're saving can be filled. Lord, you're doing so much that is so big and beyond us, and we can't even comprehend it. We don't even really understand what it all is, but it involves a big mission and you want to use people like us. And the good news is we don't have to understand it all. We just have to be surrendered to you. I pray that you would help us to do that today. In Jesus' name, amen.